I'm going to do another success story. This is about my 2016 buck from Southeast Ohio. If you haven't seen my success story about my 2015 unlucky buck, check that story out, because it will tell you how I ended up in the right place at the right time to get this buck. Pretty good story. It's a nice buck from 2015. This is what I followed it up with the next year. So my 2015 buck was my biggest buck ever. This guy eclipsed it barely a year later. So what I'm going to do is just give you a little bit of the background on this buck. So if you did see the other story, one of the things that you'll recall is that I was hunting in Josh's spot, and part of the agreement was if I got a buck there, regardless of how I did there, it was his spot. He's the first choice to hunt there, and I was gonna have to find somewhere new for 2016. So the neighbor had 80 acres that we've since purchased and is what we call the Habitat Oasis. It's actually part of the Habitat Oasis. Our overall project is 150 acres, 70-acre parcel that Josh owned originally, and then the 80 acres that we purchased in 2017. So I was hunting on the 80 acres the year before we purchased it. We'd contacted the owner, asked him if anybody was hunting it, asked him if he minded if we hunted it, and he said, go ahead and hunt it. So on Sunday, before opening day of Ohio's gun season, we went out and did some scouting. At the time, in 2016, I was doing the majority of my hunting in West Virginia. I've got a cabin down there with 25 acres. I've got family that's close by, and you know, with all the family, we had probably 400 acres that we owned, plus we had neighboring properties. So I had a big parcel of land. I spent the majority of my time hunting in West Virginia, and I'd really not done any scouting in Ohio, especially on the neighbor's property. So Sunday before gun season, we head out in the afternoon, we go walk the property, and the majority of it's a big field. And there was a nice ridge, so we walked up into the woods and started hiking around the ridge. On the one end, I could see, as we snuck in, we came across some turkeys that were feeding on acorns. It was a spot that looked attractive to me, and one of the spots that I considered. But we continued to walk, and I got to the top of the ridge, and when I got to the top of the ridge, I found there was a pretty good thicket on the neighbor's property. Not on the neighbor who'd given us permission, but the next neighbor over. So I was fairly close to the property line. And from there I could look. I couldn't see all the way to the oaks I'd just come through, but I could see a good ways down that way. I could also see down into a draw, and the combination of what I could see from that ridge I just really liked. I liked the idea of sitting on the edge of that thicket and just thinking, you know, as things get crazy, the deer are going to head to that thicket for bedding, or potentially come out of that thicket if they've already been bedded there. So I set up a climber and headed out. I was set for opening day. The next morning I got up nice and early. I headed out. I actually took, I think I took Josh's side-by-side, or maybe I had mine, I forget, but I drove a good ways out to it, and I parked probably 300-400 yards away from where I was going to hunt. I crossed the field, climbed the hill, walked in. It was pitch black, got into my stand and climbed up the stand. So it was a nice morning. It was not going to rain. Got settled in and just started waiting on daylight. As daylight started to break, I realized it was going to be a foggy morning, which was a repeat of 2015. 2015 had been foggy. I had to wait on the fog to clear before I grunted and could really see very far. So for 2016, it was a repeat. I climbed the tree. I'm sitting there waiting on daylight. It's foggy. I look down the hill, and just as far down the hill as I can see a big-bodied deer moving through. And when I first catch it, its head is behind a tree, and I assume it's a doe. So I sit there, it's moving slow, and I see it step out from behind the tree, and I immediately recognize it's not a doe, and it's a shooter buck. You know, not just any buck, clearly a shooter. He was probably, I don't know, 100 and some, just a little over 100 yards away probably. I was hunting with my Remington 12 gauge. It's an 1100 with a slug barrel on it, which is, you know, it's fairly accurate, but I didn't have a lot of confidence in it at 100 yards. You get out to 60, 70 yards, I felt pretty good, but really at 100 yards, I wasn't real comfortable. So I'm watching this deer, and he's headed parallel to me. He's headed out into what looks like into a field where I'd parked. And as I'm watching him, all I can think is, there's no way I let this buck walk into that field and walk away without getting a shot at him. So he's still a good distance away. I'm watching him really closely, and I realize that he's starting to turn, and he's headed up towards me. So I'm standing there, I've got a scope on the shotgun, I've got it on him, and I'm watching him come closer and closer. And at this point, I'm really not paying attention to his rack. I know he's a good buck, I know he's a shooter, but I'm not really looking the rack over. I didn't need to. I knew he was a good buck. And I watched him close in the distance. So he comes in, I see him at 70. He's got no idea that I'm there. Keeps coming, 60, 50. I don't know what the final distance was, 40, 30. And as he's coming, I'm in the tree looking a little bit southeast, and I'm watching him come up behind me. And as he comes behind me, I realize I'm turned in my stand. I look and I realize I can feel the breeze across the back of my neck. And at that point I realize it's time to take a shot before he wins you, because he is just about downwind from you. And when he smells me, he's gonna be gone. So I put the gun on him. Again, he's probably 30, 40 yards. I'm on him, no concerns at all. Pull the trigger and shoot, and he takes off running. No sign that he's been shot. He doesn't jump. Nothing about him looks like it's a hit. So I'm turned this way looking around the tree. I immediately turn around the other direction so I can see him run behind me, and I get the gun up on him, and I'm following him through the woods. He's not running hard. Again, doesn't look hit, no signs of a hit. He runs 40 yards, I'm following him with the gun, and he stops. And he starts looking around. I don't give him much time, but at this point I can tell, no sign of a hit. I put it on him again, I shoot, and this time he rears up and just takes off as hard as he can. I know I've hit him. I know I've hit him solid. And I watch him run down the edge of the tree line, out of the woods into this kind of a pine thicket. And as he runs out, I see him just a weird lurch that his whole head jerks back, his body twists, and then off he goes over the hill. And at this point I know I've hit him, but really don't know how well. So I'm in a climber. I work my way down the tree, and the first thing I do is I walk over to the spot where I didn't go to the spot where I'd first shot. I went to the spot where I'd hit him the second time, and there's blood there. I can tell that I've hit him. I start following it, and it's spraying everywhere, so I know I've got a good shot. So it's a walk through the woods to follow this blood trail, no problem at all. I get to where he left the woods, and I'm following him, and as you come out of the woods into this pine thicket, it's full of grasses and weeds that are probably waist high on me. And at this point I'm kind of concerned, because I'm following him pretty quickly after the shot, that, am I going to jump him? Am I going to spook him? Am I going to keep pushing him? So I tell myself I'm going to go another 20 yards, see what the blood's doing, and then decide what to do. So I follow the blood just a little bit further to where the hill comes to a crest. I look over the hill, and there he is laying 10, 15 yards over the hill. He's dead. I go down, take a look at him, and I just cannot believe what I've got. When you count the points, he's got 16 scoreable points, and then little nubbins all over the place. As I'm looking at him, I want to say he's laying with his left side down. As I turn the rack, I look and realize he's broken his G3 off. I mean, it is snapped clean. And my first thought was, did I shoot it off with that first shot? But I notice it's gone, and this little nubbin right here at the base of his beam is broken as well. So I look him over real good. I'm counting points. I'm texting Josh, letting him know big buck down, and I'm just beside myself. Cannot believe what I've got here. I then walked back up the hill, and looking, I thought, I'm going to see if I can find this tine. Did I shoot it off? So I went back up, and I find a little tiny pine tree where he had just come into the pine thicket, and it's clearly freshly scarred. And as I look at it, I can see it's scarred up high, and then further down there's another scar. I can see that that's where he had hit. That's why he lurched so weird when he first came out of the woods. And so I start looking there for that tine. I can't find it anywhere. So I decide to backtrack the blood trail. I go back to where I first shot him. No sign of that tine anywhere, where the second shot was. And from there I go to start backtracking to where I first shot him. And to my relief, as I look back through there, I do find there's a blood trail between the two spots. So I had hit him the first time. It's been several years since then. I don't recall where the first shot was. It was not a bad shot. He probably would have died had I let him go on the first shot, but I didn't know that at the time, so I put that second one in him. So I went back to the cabin. I got Eric and Dylan, my son and my nephew, brought them out there to see the buck. They were beside themselves. Brought a rake, and I went up through that field raking and raking, trying to find that broken antler, and never did find it. I spent a lot of time looking. My taxidermist actually ended up cutting one and replacing it with something that matched similar to this side. So it looks good. I sure wish I'd found his and I'd been able to put it back and know that I had my buck's antler. But that was my 2016 buck. I referred to him as the Unlucky Buck 2 because, again, it was an easy hunt. This was 7:30 in the morning. It was barely daylight when I first saw him, and took him by 7:30. So Unlucky Buck number 2. So a good one. He became my biggest ever. I'm not a big one for measuring. I did throw a tape on him, made some calculations around, if his other tine was similar in size, which the replacement is, it puts him between 160, 165 inches. I only share that so that, if you can't tell from the video what size he is, it gives you a sense for about where he is in terms of measurements. But, for me, he was a shooter buck. I knew it. I knew he was going on the wall, and pretty excited about him. So when you look him over, some of the things, I don't know how well you can see. I'll get the camera and really go over his rack closely. But here on his right side, he's got a sticker at the base. He's got a split brow tine. You come on up, his G2, nice tall G2 with a sticker on it. G3, another one, again, nice length on it. G4, and then the main beam out here has a little bit of a crab claw, very distinct crab claw that we see in a lot of our bucks on the property. On the other side, we've got this tine, which was broke. I'm guessing it had another, I don't know, ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch on it, because it's broken at a pretty thick spot. You come up here, you got the brow tine. Off the back of it is a little bit of a split that's, I don't know, it's an inch long. And then you got your G2, the broken G3, which had a drop tine under it. Makes me wonder if maybe that's why that one broke, is that it wasn't the force, or it was a combination of the force, and because some of the nutrients that went into these tines created this drop tine instead of this one being fully formed. Maybe that's why it broke off. And then we got the G4 and the main beam. So real nice buck, real excited about it. And again, I'll put the camera on him real close so that you can get a good look at him. But that was my 2016 buck. The following spring, we purchased the property, so we now own it. We call it the Habitat Oasis. And if you're not familiar with the Habitat Oasis project, check out the video that I'm posting here, and you can see what we're doing there and how we're turning that 80-acre strip mine and the 70 acres that Josh has into a Habitat Oasis where deer from all over the place are going to want to come. So thanks for joining. Keep in mind, whether it's spring, summer, winter, or fall, there's always something to do outside, and that's why we say outdoors is always in season. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends, and good luck out there. Thanks, and have a good day.